Hello, everyone. Welcome to the For Animals for Earth podcast slash video cast. Today, our topic is animal welfare media, and I'm joined by Tom Cohen. Hi, Tom.
Hey, how are you? Nice to be here.
Good,
Yeah,
good. You know what? Did I pronounce your name right? Tom
you did.
Cohen.
That's
Okay.
right. Yeah,
It seems like
definitely
a pretty straightforward.
the Tom part's pretty easy. Yeah, no, definitely. You got it.
So, Animal Welfare Media is a production company that creates videos, short films, documentaries to help animal interest groups further their mission. Tom is the executive producer at Kibble Creative, and you are an extremely talented individual. So, you're
Oh,
a
I appreciate it.
writer.
Thanks. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I've been reading about you. You're a writer, you're a director, you're a producer. You've won multiple Emmy Awards. And what I think is really amazing is that you take all of these skills that you have from many years in the industry and you give them to helping animals. And I think that that is incredible. And I think that it is, something that I dream of in my life using my skills to help animals. I think a lot of people that follow this show feel the same way. And I just think it's so cool that you do that. And I'm so excited to learn more about it today.
Oh,
Um,
thanks. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to talking about what I've been doing.
I can't wait. So let's start with can you tell us just a little bit about your background, how you got into film and the television industry, and then how you decided to start using this background to help animals.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I'll give you the short version because there's a lot of time has passed and a lot of stuff's happened, and I've been doing a lot of different projects. So, I started out in New York, actually as a comedian, comedy writer, and performer. A lot of stuff on stage, a lot of sketch comedy, improv, and it kind of quickly became clear that it would probably be better for me, instead of trying to pursue a comedy career, to actually get into more like TV and film production. So I ended up working at MTV and Nickelodeon and VH1 and the whole Viacom set of networks as a producer and writer and director. I actually appeared in a couple of shows on air. And then from there, I ended up doing a bunch of stuff for History Channel and Discovery. I worked on the show Cash Cab, which was a game show on Discovery. I was the showrunner and executive producer of that show for like 440 episodes, and we won 3 Emmys for it, which was very cool. And at a certain point, so I did all this TV stuff, and at the same time, I started working in for clients to do short films, and I kind of morphed into more short form stuff. Especially when the internet kind of took off, I was able to transition into more short form film and content writing, producing, directing, developing short films and videos for organizations. And at the same time, on like a parallel track, I've always been a really big animal advocate ever since I was a kid. So at a certain point, I decided that it would make a lot of sense for me to try to merge those two interests, like film and video production and TV production, and my interest in animal welfare. And I thought, oh, I wonder if I could actually launch a production company that would focus specifically on doing content for animal welfare organizations or issues. The short answer is not really. I mean, I've been doing really well, but I supplement it with other projects because there's not a ton of, as everyone knows, there's not an incredible amount of money in the animal welfare industry or field. So, but it's a passion. A lot of these are passion projects. And so I've been able to come up with really creative, clever, and interesting ways to make film and video that advocates for animals. So it started out doing stuff for Humane Society. I did a couple of videos for PETA, and then branched out to 20 or 25 organizations. It might even be more than that at this point. I just did a project for Compassion in World Farming. So anything that touches on factory farming, domestic animal advocacy, wildlife, ocean. I did a film for Oceana about marine life. So anything that I can do creatively to come up with ideas, concepts in the film and video and visual media realm that can really get people to get interested in an issue or donate money or advocate themselves and sort of spark an interest in the viewer. So it's run the gamut from animation to live action. We've done a bunch of stunts. We have high concept stuff that I can talk about. So it's really just coming up with creative, interesting ways to tell the world about animal issues.
I think it's so cool how diverse what you do is, and I would recommend that people who are listening visit your website, which is animalwelfaremedia.com, right?
And yeah,
Yeah.
so there's right, animalwelfaremedia.com. I also, my umbrella production company is called Kibble Creative, like kibble as in dog food. So it's kibblecreative.com, and within kibblecreative.com, you'll see all the other work I've done, and there's also a tab for Animal Welfare Media, so you can click that way.
Okay, perfect. So that's probably the easiest place to go. And
Yeah,
then once people see the animal welfare media site, you can see you have a very easy list of all of these different charities that you've helped, and you can click on it and see the videos. And what's amazing is the diversity of the videos that you've done, but also just as a resource to find people to support. I was looking
right.
at that and I was thinking, wow, this is like such a great way to discover new organizations to support. So
Yeah,
I
there's some
recommend.
obscure, like some relatively obscure groups that have come to me. Like I did a film for Sea Otter Savvy, which is a group in California that advocates for sea otter welfare. And I've done a film for um, Humane Farming Association, and I've done film for um, Mutual Rescue, which is an organization also in California that advocates for dog and cat rescue and adoption. And they make their own films, which is an interesting twist. But so, yeah, so a lot of different groups.
And I think you've really tapped into a medium that I think is extremely helpful for these organizations. I know that friends of mine who are running, wildlife rescues and rehabs, you're in way over your head just in the daily demands of everything that you're doing, but there's this increasing pressure to be marketing and connecting to people and doing social media. And it's just like, how in the world do you balance it all? And you're able to offer something that can really take that off their plate and help them like really professionally market what they're doing. And kind of in this short film space. So is most of what you do, or is all of what you do kind of focused in this short film space? And how do you decide what kind of approach you're taking or what you're aiming for in a video? Like what kind of action you want people to take at the
Right.
end?
Yeah. So it really varies depending on the, I call them clients, and to a certain extent, they're partners in terms of trying to get this messaging out. But it depends on what we're trying to achieve. So so I've done the last 3 years I've done films for Compassion in World Farming. They're an amazing organization. They have international presence, and they specifically advocate. I mean, it kind of goes without saying from their name, but they advocate for farm animals, and trying to reduce our consumption of factory farm animals. They're a very even-handed organization, and they're not heavy-handed. So we've come up with a lot of really creative ways to sort of market their message, or to create a short film in a clever way. So a couple of years ago, we did a film called How to Roast a Chicken, and it was a comedy roast. So it wasn't like roasting a chicken, but it was actually, the Comedy Central comedic roasts. So we actually had a chicken on a stool at a comedy club, and we had comedians roasting, quote unquote, the chicken, saying, oh, you're so ridiculous looking, like kind of just making fun of the chicken. And at the end, all the comedians were able to hold the chicken, and none of them have ever actually held a live chicken. And so they were all just amazed by this animal that we've been eating for centuries, and suddenly sort of connecting with it on a personal level. So I came up with that idea to sort of advocate for chickens specifically, and that's the campaign they were trying to get out there. We also did I just did an animated film for them where we introduced their new sustainability app that they're launching called Evaluate Your Plate, which is sort of, you can enter the food you're eating and it'll tell you what your impact is on the environment and the planet and the animals. So we did a really clever fun animated thing that I supervise with an animating team that I work with. Um, so my production company will come up with a creative idea. If they come to me and say, we want to do a perfect example is Canadian Coalition for Farm Animals was interested in doing a film that talked about the transportation of factory farm animals in Canada. They have these giant trucks that they take animals on, and they're not refrigerated or heated. So in Canada, when it gets super, super cold, all these animals are being transported in these giant trucks and they're all freezing to death. There's no real compassion for the actual transportation process when an animal is being brought to slaughter. So, it's bad enough they're being brought to their slaughter, but then even on the way, they're sort of subjected to heat and cold, and these trucks are not suitable, right? So we did a film. So I came up with this idea to do a film where we have a couple shopping for a new car at a car lot, and they're super obsessed with the comforts in the car, like, oh, it has heated seats and it's got dual air conditioning, and then we intercut that with the animals in a truck that are freezing to death and are overheated, to sort of just point out, like, we're really, really worried about how comfortable we are in our vehicles, but we don't care about how animals are. So coming up with creative ideas like that, where it's not just saying, oh, animals are suffering, you know, let's just show animals suffering and say, hey, we need your help. Let's come up with an idea for a film that's sort of funny or clever, that can advocate in a different way and still get the point across. And then at the end, please, contact your representative or give us money to help us fight this cause. So that's kind of the approach we take.
I love how you just explained all of that, because it made me realize that one of the things that I personally really liked about what you do when I was looking through everything was that you do come up with all of these creative ways to approach what is a very, very difficult topic of conversation. And, I, throughout my years in this space, I have struggled with that kind of same thing, where what's happening out there is so shocking
Mm.
that you feel like you need to share it because people don't know what's happening, but at the same time you don't want to be the person out there constantly sharing the things that lodge into people's brains, and then they're like, I can't take it anymore, and shut off.
Right. So yeah,
And
we try to,
yeah.
like, when we show footage of animal suffering, which is really at the root of what we're trying to stop, is, if you show footage of it, we tend to try to do it in like really short little snippets to sort of suggest and almost shock, but like really quickly. And not, the goal is not to get people to feel uncomfortable or so uncomfortable that they're like, they don't feel compelled to help because it just feels hopeless or it feels too sad or shocking. The real goal is to say, okay, here's a production company or producers and working with an organization that wants, in a clever way, to tell you about something that you may not know about. Like when we did a film for Humane Farming Association, they were advocating for or trying to educate people about this USDA subsidy that farmers get, even if they neglect their animals, and even if they lose 1,000 cows or sheep or whatever, or pigs, because of their own neglect, like they left them out in a cold snap or just something that was done to not look out for the welfare of animals. They get reimbursed, so the taxpayers ultimately are paying for this subsidy, and not taking into account that there could be more humane ways of treating animals. So we went out in Times Square. We had a guy dressed as Uncle Sam walking around collecting money for dead livestock, and people were like, he was like, can I get money for dead livestock? And people were like, it was a very guerrilla style, like no one knew we were there. This guy's walking around with a bucket, and then he's sitting down with tourists in Times Square and explaining, hey, did you know that your tax money is going for this crazy thing? And oh man, that's messed up, I didn't realize that. So that was just our idea, and sort of a way to explain that kind of arcane, interesting, unknown thing that's happening. And by interesting, I mean interesting, like, oh, that's interesting, that's happening, I don't really like that. So we had to come up with a way to sort of express that without getting too technical or in the weeds or getting too depressing, right, about the subject.
Yeah, like that's got to be a tough balance, because you want to evoke emotion, but not so much emotion that people shut down. That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, as a film producer and a TV writer and a comedian, like all those things together, my brain tends to try to go to an interest. And there are definitely other ones that are much more straightforward. Like when we talk about Oceana, we did a film for International Bird Rescue. It was just introducing them, talking about the work they do and how important it is, and how they're out there fighting for these things that we all love, birds and the ocean. And those were much more straightforward. And it talks about the mission of the organization because it felt right for those groups and what they were doing. And then there are other things that require a little bit more of a clever twist or conceit or high concept. We did a film for Humane Society about the way battery cages for animals, they're all crammed. Animals are crammed into these cages in super tight quarters. They can't even turn around. So we rented out an elevator at this big prestigious office building in Washington, D.C. We got like 18 extras, actors, to keep cramming into this elevator, one after the other, one after the other, hitting all the floors. They're all crammed in. They can't even move. And then the elevator just breaks and it just stops and it turns from color to black and white. And everyone's in there and the elevator won't move. And they're hitting the button and nothing's happening. And they're starting to freak out. And then we flash some, footage of chickens crammed together. And we say, like, what if the elevator never started again? That's what it's like for some of these animals. So trying to give it a more human / creative, interesting take to try to explain to people that may not know, this is what's happening. Take a minute of your day to help educate people about this.
I would imagine that you've learned a lot of new things just being involved in this, just like everybody who's ultimately watching the videos. A lot of the videos you've just described, I'm thinking, these are facts that are such detailed facts about what happens that
Mm-hmm.
that the vast majority of people, this has never even crossed their mind. For you, has it been the same way? Have you learned new things by being involved in this, and has it impacted or changed anything in your life by being involved and working with these different groups?
It's definitely given me a couple things. It's definitely given me an appreciation for the work that some of these organizations are doing. And there is definitely and I've also learned in sort of I think actually one of the things that I was most surprised about in doing this work is that there's a lot of politics within the animal welfare community. And there are some groups and all these different organizations are all vying for donations or for members or whatever it might be. And so I've come across this sort of political vibe or political dynamic that exists between some groups. Some groups are looked at as, oh, they're not really working in the right way, or they're doing X, Y, and Z, and we're super militant and we believe in complete and utter veganism. And if you're not a vegan, you're not an animal welfare advocate. And there are other groups that are much more, they have a lighter touch about it. And they're sometimes at loggerheads, some of the groups, and they don't like this group or this group doesn't like that group. I stay out of that because I just want to do good work for organizations that are helping animals. And I don't get into the weeds of who's, looked at as a, better organization than another organization. So that's been a surprise to learn that element of it. In terms of specific issues, I mean, I've definitely didn't realize all the different ways that groups are advocating for animals there, or for the environment, or for nature. I mean, there's so many different approaches and so many different issues that, like this group, Compassionate World Farming, with they're really, really interested in advocating for chickens, because chickens are sort of just in pure numbers. And in terms of like being an animal that doesn't have the charisma that other animals have, I think they tackle it from that approach, because if you get to know a chicken as an individual animal, it changes the way you feel about all animals. So that's been interesting to learn about the ways that different organizations approach their work, and having to work on a project with an organization for a month or month and a half gets me involved in the way they work. I mean, on a more of a kind of like a smaller level, I don't get into the details of a lot of stuff in a group, but just in terms of their creative mindset, they all have a different way of approaching the world and their advocacy.
Yeah, I would imagine that's a pretty cool thing to see because you can kind of form even in your mind like this is kind of what I think seems effective or not, even just within your own mind. But yeah, I was thinking about as you were saying the politics and the kind of arguing. That's something that shocked me a lot too about the animal welfare world. I think when I first came into it, I maybe had on maybe a little Pollyanna, but I was like, everybody
Mm.
loves animals and everybody's
Right.
working together. And you realize that I think because these are such passionate topics, everyone has like their conviction of what is the best way to deal with it and move forward. And so inevitably you end up with these disagreements. And I love how you said, you just stay out of it. And what's cool is you have found a way to help and be somewhat neutral, but still really dig into what everybody's doing and learn about it and figure out a unique way to make a difference with them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I can, if there's a body of work that I've done for organizations, it kind of evens out, if that makes sense. It's not like I'm working for one organization and I'm just enmeshed in that point of view. If I'm doing 25 or 30 different films or videos, then the entire body will move the needle forward in terms of helping animals. And even if one group is not as, effective as another group, ultimately in the big picture, just doing all this work and having that stuff out there hopefully will help the overall cause.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was thinking, like even as you said the word effective, and I think that this is something we all naturally do. We look at various metrics and, KPIs and indicators about how effective are the things that we do. But for me personally, I have been continuing to try to remind myself that I don't ultimately know how effective something is because you don't know how many people you touch. You don't know, like, of every single one of those little videos out there, you don't know, like, who watched it and then went and talked to their friends about
Mhm.
it. And, it's like this ripple effect that in reality, any of us working in this type of work, we don't know really how effective we are. So we just have to focus on doing what we can, right? And promoting as much as we can. And yeah, so I've
Yeah, I
found
mean,
that same thing with me.
yeah, I don't, I mean, I'm interested in how well these videos do, quote unquote, how well they do in terms of how many people see them or whether they achieve the goal of the organization. But to a large extent, I sort of stay out of that part of it because what I'm trying to do is make interesting, compelling short films that I think are well produced. They have great editing and shooting. Like I'm worried about the production stuff, and as a producer and a creative person, I want to make sure that the films are good little films or good little videos. And in terms of whether a million people see it or 25 people see it, at the end of the day, as long as I think it's a good, effective tool, then I'm happy with the work. You know what I mean? There's there are some organizations that just have a better, not better, but a broader reach. Um, there are obviously like your PETAs and your humane societies. They have millions of people that follow what they do versus smaller groups that don't. So you're just going to inevitably have more people seeing the videos that they put out. Um, but I don't look at it in terms of that as so much as even a small group. We make a film. We want to make it great and interesting and compelling, even if 30 people are going to see it.
I think that's just a really good piece of advice for all of our creators out there because I think that a lot of people who do follow For Animals for Earth do it because it's a passion for them and
Mm.
it's something they're doing on the side and they're using their creativity to help in whatever way they can. And I think that's just a really good piece of advice to remember to focus on putting out good quality stuff and trusting that it's reaching where it needs to go. Um, Something I like to ask everybody who comes on the show is to share with us one simple idea that comes to your head of something that people could do to help animals and the environment right now or in their daily lives. One simple thing.
I mean, the first thing that popped in my head is just to think. like, I know that seems like a simple sort of strange thing to say, but we have routines as people, and we have um, we have a way of going about our lives almost like not robotic, but sometimes we just do things because we're doing them, and we don't necessarily always think about the impact that some small thing that we do might have. So if you're able to think about the bigger picture and think about the world and think about other people and animals and nature and the environment, at least like once or twice a day, just think about it. And then I think you'll change your mind, you'll change your brain so that you start to think about that more regularly. Um, it doesn't, people always say like, well, stop doing X or stop doing Y, or, do this or buy an electric car, or whatever it might be. I think if you just start to think openly and honestly about your place in the universe and the world and how everything impacts everything else, then you'll, hopefully start to become a more aware person about the impact you're having.
I definitely agree. I think I mean I've noticed it in my own life over the years. The more that I noticed and the more I tried to be present of thinking about how is what I'm doing right now affecting, that little ant that I'm stepping over instead of stepping on, or that, leaf that I'm, nurturing instead of pulling off. I don't know, but it's
Yeah,
just,
well, it's like if you see, like we have a 6-year-old son, and so when we have an ant or a spider in the house or a fly, we don't kill it. I mean, there's no reason to. It's kind of like it makes no sense to kill an animal in your house if you can get outside and it's not hurting you. Like, we take spiders, we put them on a piece of paper, we bring them outside, or we try not to step on an ant, or there's just, I think that's kind of like a small thing you can do, but it also just starts to seep into your mind that, oh, I can be compassionate. It's not that hard. you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true because I do think like our instinct, like, I mean, I grew up learning to kill a bug when I see a bug, and then now we do the same thing and like,
Right.
run it outside. And I think just seeing every living being as a living being goes so far, right?
Except
And
maybe
cultivating
mosquitoes.
compassion.
But yeah, I know. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. That's one of these things that's kind of like, you start to get into this philosophical territory when you start talking about mosquitoes and things that can carry disease, and yeah, so it's, there is some context. I think a part of what people don't, and this is a broader conversation that I would love to have but it's a longer conversation, but just I feel like we as people, we've almost lost the ability to process context to a certain extent, and everything, particularly in politics, where, oh, well, this person said this, now they're saying this, so they're a hypocrite, or this person did that and this other person did a similar thing, and so they're both equally as bad. And it goes for any issue, but like everything has a context. So being able to understand the context of what you're doing, if you're a person who eats meat, there's no reason why you can't also be an animal advocate if you understand where the meat's coming from and you have an understanding of like how you can maybe reduce it or do once a week or whatever it is that you can do. You don't have to be all or nothing. Everything has a context and there's nuance. So if you're able to understand these things and think it through, then every little thing you do can start to make a difference.
I would so love to have this deeper conversation as well. I was
Yeah.
like, love these conversations, which,
Yeah.
maybe we could do it as a follow-up, or we could do a
Right. Right.
clubhouse or something.
I just have this, I don't know, I have this weird obsession with context because I feel like, and the media doesn't help a lot of times where they have people on and they talk about, well, you know, you do this, so you can't be a good person. And, well, maybe it was, especially now with this idea that, when you say something, it comes back to haunt you or whatever it is. And there's always a context, and you look into the context. And if you understand the context, you can then assess what the proper reaction should be. And so it's true with animal welfare too. I mean, if people, every group needs to put their work in context, and everyone has to understand the context of what they're working in. And PETA and other groups often get sort of they have people have visceral reactions to the work that PETA does or groups like that. And certainly there's a context behind every issue that they advocate for, and to look deeper into it and understand where they're coming from on certain things will help you understand the issue as opposed to just having a visceral reaction to the overall picture.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's very needed right now in our world and growing even more needed every single day.
Right, right.
So the best way for people to contact you if they'd like to get in touch with you.
Yeah, so if you go to kibblecreative.com, you can message me through that website, or Animal Welfare Media is also a contact tab or form. Or I can just give you my email, which is tom.cohen@kibblecreative.com. So that's my name, tom.cohen@kibblecreative.com. Just send me an email if you're interested in talking about anything animal related, or if you want to, maybe you want to talk about making a short film or video. I'm happy to bounce ideas off of you, and we can talk about what you're interested in and what you might want to do.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I definitely hope people reach out, and I want to hear if people reach out what you guys come up with together.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
and yeah, maybe we'll have this follow-up conversation. So I'll let everybody know about
Yeah, we can do another. We
digging
can do
into it.
another. Yeah, we can do another half an hour about these other more kind of philosophical issues at some point.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be great. All right. Well, thank you for joining if you joined us today. And thank you, Tom, for joining. And I am
Thank
going
you,
to send
everyone.
us
Thanks,
out.
Brandy. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.